Okay, we are recording. I'm Jeff Leuven with Arm Dynamics, and in this interview, I have Brian Hill of The Complete Combatant and Shane Kerwin of Personal Survival Solutions, two of the best minds in this industry. And I really have been looking forward to this since we talked about like joint classes, Shane and I, a little bit a while ago. And I was just like, well, anyone that he does a class with, a joint class, that's going to be like a super interesting collaboration because, I'm very interested. Let's start out here with a couple of introductions. And just before that, let me plug my company, armdynamics.com. Like, subscribe, and share. I'm going to be doing a lot more videos where one of my goals with this channel is to produce some good information that you can pass on to other people to expand their horizons, expand what they may look at, maybe the way they look at the world, the way they look at themselves, and empower them to make better choices in general. So in this class, in this interview, we're going to be talking about a joint class that they have, and it is called, drumroll, Irregular Warfare, Singleton Operator. And when Shane told me that, I was like, yeah, can you guys come on the show? So go ahead, Shane, give us a little bit about your background, who you are and whatnot.
All right. Hey, Jeff, thanks for having us on. Shane Kerwin, Personal Survival Solutions. The audience got my full bio last time we were together, but just to kind of hit the highlights, I'm a retired Army Special Forces guy. I did 24 years in, 16 of them at 5th Special Forces Group, where I served in the roles as a Special Forces medic, sniper instructor, and then operations sergeant or team sergeant towards the end of my career. Towards that end part of the career, I had already been teaching on the armed citizen side, but with some encouragement, I started Personal Survival Solutions in 2018, and we've been running that ever since. So just a quick me in the nutshell. I said we did the full bio last time, so it makes people go and listen to the last one.
Yeah, and if viewers, who I'm sure that they will be interested, if you want to see a full interview with Shane about his background and his military service, then you can check that out on Practically Tactical and really get an in-depth look at Shane as a teacher, a soldier, and a man. So that was an awesome show. Well, thank you. Great to have you, Shane. And Mr. Brian Hill, sir, go ahead and give us a little bit about yourself.
I've been a martial artist my whole life. I started when I was 13. I've gone through every generation of martial arts. I've fought amateur and pro level in boxing, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, submission grappling, and MMA, of course. I have been a national firearms instructor now primarily for the last 10 years and 6 years on the road. But my real claim to fame is I bring modern coaching methodologies to the industry. I've been to Olympic Training Center. I hold several degrees in coaching, and I'm sponsored by HK as their national trainer. And Philster also sponsors me as one of the representatives. So I've got a big background on how to teach people to do unique things, and everything is martial arts my whole life. Worked in the private sector, done some law enforcement work for a while. And primarily, Shane and I couldn't come from different backgrounds, more different backgrounds. So it's an interesting collaboration between the two of us.
Yeah, and I saw on your, in doing a little bit of, the word that I use is creeping, but I guess that's digging or, homework. I just think it's funny when
research. It's
research. That's Lurker. What, so I could say, like, when people say, oh, do you watch football? And I'm like, I watch college football. And they're like, really? Who do you like? I'm like, the kickers and the quarterbacks. I call that creeping in real time. But no, I did some research. We got to bring us full circle, right? I did some research, and your bio said that you started teaching martial arts around 18. So you got, I'm wondering also if we had similar experiences of like, eventually you're the highest belt in the class, or you start teaching the kids, because that was my experience growing up in traditional martial arts. Was that kind of what that meant?
Yeah, but I was running a full-time Taekwondo gym with 300 people in it when I was 18 years old. I taught for the chief instructor because I was willing to do the work, but also I was a strange kid who came out of an abusive household, and I really needed structure in my life, so I lived in the gym. I had been training nonstop since I was 13, and usually 6, 7 hours a day. And I just forced my way in as an instructor, and I was well suited to it. And I didn't do well in school, but I found that I taught well. And like you, I ended up teaching the kids first, but eventually they just gave the whole program to me. So I was his lead instructor at his 12-person chain in the Atlanta area, but he had a world chain too. So I was teaching 300 students at that point, which was a live or die moment of sometimes 30 or 40 white belts in one class.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was just I had an interview with our friend James Osbacher, and we were talking about like kind of growing up in martial arts and stuff like that. And he asked me, like, did you always want to get into teaching? And I really never thought about it this way, but we're growing up in martial arts. You know what? Well, I'll finish this thought. When we're growing up in martial arts, oftentimes it's like, okay, now I'm 9 years old. Well, we've got all 8-year-olds here, and you've got the 3 stripes on your white belt.
Mhm.
You get them warmed up, you train, you teach them like the first couple of techniques, and it really is an awesome culture. In fact, if we hit it off like I think we will and continue to on this show, I think it'd be a very interesting show to do about martial arts and traditional martial arts because there's so much kind of at this point almost disinformation about traditional martial arts, or maybe misinformation. I don't know, because people don't even know what they're talking about BSing it and this and that, and saying that it's bullshit, etc. But awesome. Well, very, very cool. Boy, this I gotta keep myself grounded here because I'm so excited about the show. Now, for Shane to get information on him and his product, his training, go to www.personalsurvivalsolutions.com and Brian Hill at thecompletecombatant.com. Before we go into this very awesome class, which is Irregular Warfare Singleton Operator, I'd like to get a question in, and one of the things that I stress to people when they're looking at training with anybody, is and it's kind of it's a way to get around, are they just regurgitating information? But it's more than that. I say, do they have a perspective? And I'd like to know what your guys what has influenced your perspective on self-protection, on training, and oftentimes this comes in with someone's history, maybe MMA, etc. So what has we'll start with you, Brian. What has influenced your personal perspective on self-protection and training?
It's very interesting. The competitive world often has a bad reputation, but it drives shooting, it drives fighting, it drives the innovation that we see behind things. And oftentimes the very technical side of it comes from that. I'll tell you what really changed my mind about the preparation process was becoming a professional cornerman, having to get other people ready to fight, how important emotional EQ was to keep them in the present. The area where we're seriously lacking, I think, in personal protection is we talk a lot of techniques, but we don't have a good battery of how to develop the psychology of fighting, time versus information. We don't have a lot about the physiology of fighting. How do we manage tension, too much, too little, just correctly? And it became a very inner journey of how do we develop better fighters in general. I was very fortunate. The first guy that I did my apprenticeship, very much a martial arts thing, but I found a shooting instructor and I connected myself to him and taught freely for 6 years. And he similar, this will sound familiar too, but he worked with Paul Gomez and James Yeager. And that was my first introduction. So I got to see him teach. I got to see the way he ran classes. I got to develop that. And then that allowed me through the firearms industry to really go and sample everybody else, every instructor I could, and look at what was missing in the environment. What could we improve? What was something that I could bring to this aspect? And as a martial artist, the weapon is not important to us. And I don't want to be cliche, but we really have to think about ourselves, and we're the only constant in our fight. So how can we make a better version of ourselves? How can we develop self mastery? Because as we look at people, one of the most important things in fighting is deselection, the ability to manage yourself, emotionally mature in situations so you don't get angry. And how can we do this and also carry a firearm and have robust skills that allow us to move through the world?
That's great. I love that. And I will steal it, but I will give you credit. I'm about giving credit is we are the only constant in our fight. That's like that's a level deeper than, you know, you are your mind is the what is it? Your mind is the most deadly weapon. No, your mind is the ultimate weapon, right?
Yeah.
Which, but I really like that. We are the only constant in our fight. I think that that's kind of more personal to what we're doing. So really cool. Okay. And I also like that time versus information. And maybe we'll, if we have a chance, we could circle back to that, maybe how it applies to the classes, the class that you guys are going to do. Cool. And now, Shane, if you could, as far as what has influenced your personal perspective on self-protection and training, I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. So I think it originally started off, you know, when I was young, uh, learning to shoot from my dad, and he really started to influence me on like, hey, there's bad people out there that want to do bad things to good people. And so that started to shape my mindset. And then, of course, as I went in the military, which was something that I wanted to follow after my father did it, uh, that you know, I was serving my country and helping people that couldn't take care of themselves or protect themselves. And so, kind of that selfless service that continued to develop as I went from the conventional army and then into special operations. And then during that time, I was very fortunate. I mean, I was self taught or taught from my father as far as shooting went and, you know, firearm safety and hunting. But when I had a break in service in the mid 90s, one of the things that I wanted to do was go get professional instruction with firearms. And, you know, at that time, there wasn't a whole lot that was out there. Gunsight, Thunder Ranch, you know, people knew those, but I couldn't afford that stuff at the time. And so in the back of a Combat Handguns magazine, there was a small ad that was about yay big for John Benner and Tactical Defense Institute up in Ohio. And my dad and I went up and took their first 3 pistol classes. And then that kind of exposed me then to the armed citizen side of things. And I've been back a few times. And as I was progressing through my special forces career, when I took a break and went down to the sniper committee, I was asked to help teach at a school. And so I was kind of doing them both concurrently, where I was building an experiential base in the military, teaching that way, and then also doing it on the armed citizen side. Until I got really operational again and started deploying. As I was getting towards, you know, the end of my career and talking to a variety of different instructors, Brian, you mentioned Paul Gomez. He was a big influence. Craig Douglas was another one. You know, meeting Tom Givens and taking classes with those guys, that all kind of helped shape, you know, that combative or protective mindset. And as I was transitioning out with some of their encouragement, that's when I started the company. And one of the things that I had to do is I wanted to look and see what demographic did I want to impact. And for me, you know, coming out as a special operations guy, but also having that experiential base on the armed citizen side, that was the people who I kind of wanted to impact. And it was really, again, like I said, that there's bad people out there that want to do bad things to good people. And we have to be not paranoid, but as prepared as possible. And so I've tried to cultivate that all the way through and then take it into the company. So I started teaching.
That's great. And with what one thing that you said was, you know, you've been raised, your father had stressed you the importance of being able to protect yourself because there are bad people out there that want to do bad things to you. And then you said that you then went into special forces and it was about helping protect other people. And I think that's a really curious thing that I can relate to. And I think that many of us, when we really decide to be practitioners, you know, not just like quote unquote gun people, which, you know, once you get into the training community, you're kind of no longer just a gun person. You're like a training person that likes guns. But that at a certain point, I have found, it's been my experience that many of us have made kind of a line in the sand, and it's a line in the sand for what we will tolerate being done to ourselves or to other people. Now, given that we're going through, like, if I was going to use a force continuum, so we have trying to escape, evade, etc., whatever that may look like, and then potentially pepper spray, and then hands, and verbals in there, pepper spray, hands, possible lethal force. Is that at a certain point it's kind of curious that, like, I, for example, carry around as Shane has seen, a fucking trauma bag. Like, I mean, it's a backpack, right? I don't know what it's, 18 liter. I forget it's just a backpack. And I can't fit my fucking laptop in it. So I got a MacBook Air now, and I can fit that in it, but it's full of trauma stuff. And it's full, I've got baby aspirin and fucking gloves and tourniquets and chest seals and all this, and NPA just in case, etc. And it becomes like I want to be able to protect others too. And we must rather preface that with, if we're intervening in the third party, issue, then we must know the totality of the circumstances, or else how can we make an educated or informed decision about what the hell's actually going on? Because if you shoot the guy with the gun and the guy with the gun was the undercover cop, you are still wrong, but that is I'd like to get your thoughts, Brian, about a little bit about that, about having and tell me, Shane, if I'm misunderstanding this or misrepresenting that. Okay. And then, Brian, what are your thoughts on that? At what point do you feel, or was it always an inherent thing about, or was there a real moment when you said, you know what, it's very, very important to me to be able to, if I can affect change in my environment via my training? When did that occur? What did that look like?
I think two things happened in my life. First, I did not win the parental lottery. And so my mom had a borderline personality disorder, and my dad was probably an undiagnosed sociopath. I realized early that if I did not break the cycle, I was doomed to perpetuate it. So I had a choice to become a protector or perpetuator at that moment. But I decided I would never do what they did. So I looked for structure early. But I realized too that I have some generational debt to pay back now too. That all my ancestors have done this before me, because this is a generational thing that happens. So I need to do better. Maybe I can leave the place a better place than when I came into it, and make up for a bit of this karma that comes from my family. But I think also the secondary thing is, as warriors age, we were the violence bringers. We become the life givers. We see this in philosophy. We see this in Japanese treaties of warriors. You're looking for the sword that gives life now instead of takes life. The one that allows you to balance in a moral playing field your purpose upon the field, and what is the importance and relevance to what we do. And the good person seeks to sacrifice themselves in a cause that is worthy of them, but the evil person looks to take life for their selfish needs. And I think there's a tremendous difference as warriors, as we start to look at ourselves, and for lack of a better word, but those that seek the challenge, that we want to be protectors, but we also want to be perpetuators. And we start thinking about the next generation, or the people around us who may need help. We become mentors, we become philosophers, we become medics. What an odd juxtaposition Shane is, sniper medic, but we see it all the time, do we not?
Yep.
Because that's the balance of the human soul. That is the yin and yang of what brings us to this situation, that it's not just enough to be dangerous. It's more important also to make the world a better place at the same time, to reach out, to use that strength to challenge the hero's journey and to become more than we were.
Well, that was deeper than I was anticipating. That's fucking awesome, man.
So I got 2 points.
You follow that up, Shane. You follow that up. It's on you, bro.
Well, first I got to say, Brian, is I think you need to do one of those calendars with like the saying of the day, the warrior saying of the day, because I think that would be an awesome side business. But
I second that. Yeah.
More to the fact of what we're talking about is the guy that I'm going to see up in PA here tomorrow. We were discussing the Combatant Association Summit, which I just came back from and was presenting at, and I was talking to Matt Larson down there, about what they're going to integrate into that as far as like, how are you going to advance in rank? And so the components that are made up of the Combatives Association or the Combatives University right now is combatives, obviously, fitness, so functional strength, shooting, and then medical. And so we were kind of talking about, the integration of medical and how that was going to happen. But as I was talking to my buddy John, who is also, former 18 Delta medic, similar career path, but he just did it out at First Group in a different area of responsibility. As I was bouncing ideas off of him, he brought up a really good point of, hey, as we go through, traditional martial arts, or we go through, a combatives program, and you advance in rank, and when you get to black belt, even though, you've made it to this goal, but now you're started another journey that you're continuing down, but also part of that journey, but he said was part of our role then in that responsibility of attaining that rank is to pass it on to the next generation, like you said, Brian. And I thought, that was a really good point. I think it kind of ties into what we're talking about here.
Yeah. I was making some notes about that. And the black belt thing is it's a weird thing, having been given my black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu like 2 years ago. That's a whole nother fucking rabbit hole, the jits. Oh shit, man. The jits guys are talking again when they ever shut the fuck up. So I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but from the perspective of achieving a certain amount of skill, and then hopefully having, many of us are called to wanting to pass it on, whether we're good teachers or bad teachers or otherwise, we want to do that. And, and that's like, I call it paying it forward. But just a little side note, and is that, I got the black belt, and everybody would always say, the whole journey restarts, And I believe them, but it's a totally experiential thing. It's like you're back at white belt kind of. I've had a little difficulty. I took a year off for a bunch of different reasons, but we're going back Thursday for the first time in a year, almost on the dot. So yeah, man, it's that's a whole journey for sure. But it's interesting though. The point of the story is that when we get to a certain point, I feel like if we have a certain type of personality, and I mean, for me, I look at it as, I hate to say it because it's judgmental, but fuck it, it's my show. We have the kind of character or the impulse to do so. I think it's really important, and I think that we are honoring those who trained us by helping others, whether it's by helping them get first shots, or intervening, and saying I have this whole thing that I think about, which is like, the more training I have, and this is just my opinion, I'm not saying anyone in the audience should feel this way, but fuck it, it's my show, right? Actually, gentlemen, it's our show. Onward. Is like, the more training that I get, the more I feel obligated to potentially intervene. Not so much, let's say it's not even a fight. Let's say it's a medical emergency. Dude falls, dude's not moving. CPR, is there an AED? I call 911. It's like, the more so I want to get away from that just like violence thing, because that is a small part of it, as we know. And it's like, I feel like I've been given a responsibility. Actually, I've taken it on myself, because ultimately, one of us, and God forbid me, because you guys are like, this guy's fucking crazy, is in a position where we have the highest level of training, and we have the greatest level of emotional control that we can actually positively affect a scenario or situation, whether that means, again, like lifting the person up off the railroad tracks, the subway. It's like, do we have the personal, fitness? Well, yeah, I do. Okay, well, now I have to do it. And that's, again, that's our, going back to our individual line in the sand that we have to live with, doing something, not doing something, etc. And I think it's important for people to think about that. Oftentimes people don't think, and it's not from a selfish and a super selfish perspective. It's like, oh, well, I got into training and I bought a gun to protect myself and my wife. Or in my case, myself and my beard. Aha! Wait a second. But then as this world becomes more illuminated, we see that there are other facets and stuff involved. Awesome. This is a fucking fun conversation. And we're just getting warmed up, ladies and gentlemen. Let's here in a second, we're going to talk about the class, but looking at the name. By the way, any more comments about that stuff? We could always loop around as necessary. It's like free flowing, man. It's like go with it. So with a name like Irregular Warfare, Singleton Operator, who does your training and who does this class cater to? Anybody? Sorry, I muted my mic. Anybody, and whoever wants to chime in.
Well, I think it started off. Brian came up with the initial part, and he can talk about that. I added the Singleton Operator, but Jeff, you and I were talking earlier, and kind of I think the catalyst of this class, and Brian said it before in other shows that we've done, is it's kind of a crazy world out there right now. And there's a variety of different things that are going on. We're coming up to the elections, and regardless of what side you're on, there could be some weird things that go on there, but also natural disasters that are going on, civil unrest in a variety of different places and capacities. That what happens if, again, going back to the responsibility, like you said, we're out and we have a responsibility to get home to our family or protect our family. And as we were looking at this class, we looked at it from a singleton out there, either getting somewhere or defending or protecting where they're at in these kind of weird and unknown times that are coming up. And Brian, I know you got a good part to put in that with the irregular warfare part. So I'll hand it over to you there.
Two things happened in my life that were important to this. Number one was COVID happened, and I got really sick at the gym. February 2020, I spent 30 days in bed with O2 of 80%, nearly died. But I also had to close my gym at the same time because it was empty. It had nothing to do with government shutdown. Just anybody who was going to train MMA wasn't coming to the gym except for those athletes that didn't pay. So I had to use a lot of good things like sunk cost fallacy, decide how I was going to handle this, because when I was a kid, I wanted to be Captain America, but I'm more Batman, I think, at heart. A little darker personality, a lot of plots and plans, but I never planned on a virus shutting me down. And it did. But I read the book Anti-Fragile. And it's something we all have to think about, that stress, we're not resilient, but stress actually makes us stronger. The challenges that come forward help us to grow. So I knew in that moment I could pivot my life. I'm in my 50s and I'm going to restart my life. And I end up in the shooting community because it seemed like the natural course of action. So I learned in that moment that we are capable, we're competent, we can be anti-fragile. And then I was watching Christian Craighead charge into the Nairobi hotel by himself. And, who knows how many lives he saved. And I thought, just like you said, Jeff, I hope it's not me, right? But I thought of the times that might happen. I've got two wonderful grandsons, and I've watched, several police agencies post up a line and say they're not going in. And I could see the moment that maybe there's a need for this, where we might find ourselves in this very weird thing where nobody's answering 911 or we have to take action. And most of us train very opposite with our rifle and our pistol and our equipment. We don't put it all together. We don't look at ourselves as it's in my name, the complete combatant, but how can we put all these things together? And with Shane and I, it was a great opportunity for us to, bring our separate skill sets together, create a real synergy so that we're working together from different backgrounds. And how can we get people to just use whatever gear they have, if they have a truck gun with them, if they have a pistol, whatever they have, that they can be competent, because by yourself would be really, really different. It's very different than what he did in special forces. It's very different than what I did in law enforcement. But if I had a pistol and I had a rifle, I'd have to think very clearly about different activities, what would be more effective. Sometimes it's easier with a pistol. I know in law enforcement to handle people, to open doors. Sometimes it's better with the rifle. So it was just a really interesting idea. And then I like to build generalist over specialist. Generalists tend to rule the world. We always say, jack of all trades, master of none, but he's often better than one. Nobody ever finishes the statement. The ability for the human being to do novel and complex tasks makes them more anti-fragile in the long run. And that was the idea behind the classes, that we could give them some sort of parity where they would skip from one skill to the next, not be stuck, not specialize in it, and just see what it takes to make good decisions under pressure and be able to cognitively stack, tool cycle if they needed to, which is incredibly difficult. We see it in martial arts all the time. MMA was the first real test of tool cycling, where people, if they were strikers, they tend to be strikers. If they're grapplers, and early grappling was great. Now striking's really a big advantage because of rule change. But same thing in shooting. When do we really say the pistol and the rifle are on par with each other? How can we put all this together? How can we look at your gear and see if it actually works, which we've found to be very interesting. Poor Shane has to go through all the rifles and stuff. Thank God that's your part, right?
Yes.
But it's been an interesting group. We get pistol shooters, we get rifle shooters, and they all commingle. And that's what the whole idea behind the Irregular Operator was, that we would put this together. And if you ever had to, you could be the best version of what you got with you. And if you could run it, and if you could make good decisions.
Point, Doc, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, Brian brings up a good point. Obviously I teach the rifle part, and, as Brian has said numerous times when we've been on the range, that through my career, I lived with a rifle. And so I'm pretty darn comfortable with it. And that was one of the things when I was transitioning out. I mean, I emphasized the pistol, when we had done it, but I really put an emphasis on that as I transitioned and went into teaching the armed citizen, because I wanted those things to be on par. And it didn't really matter what tool I had, but I could use them both effectively or equally effectively, but was it the correct tool to solve that problem? And I think that's part of what this class is too, is understanding, and Brian had said it earlier, is, are we picking the most beneficial thing to solve that particular problem?
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. Where I am in a major metropolitan area, I'd say that 90, if not more percent of my student base, they want to learn pistol, which I think is, par for the environment. We conceal carry and have firearms on our person. And I think that's a really good place to start, and now I'm seeing a little bit more going, desire for people working shotguns and rifles. And I think that's probably a multitude of things. But it probably has to do with just the current climate of just who knows what's going to happen day to day. And I also really like and value what you said, and appreciate how you said like a natural disaster, and when I find, and, viewers, I hope that you pick up on this, or, if you're picking up what we're putting down. But one of the things is like, how do you broach the subject, which is going to be a whole nother video I'm going to do, with non quote unquote gun people, about personal safety, about being, about a certain level of preparedness. And you know what? I always default to, when we're not, the gun thing is a little different, but when it's just like general preparedness, FEMA recommends, if it hasn't even been bumped up from this, but that you have 2 weeks worth of food and water in your home. And that's FEMA. They have no, political affiliation. They're non-denominational. So and I'll tell you, by mentioning that, I've got more people to go, and it's the truth. Like, I don't think that we need to have, unfortunately, we're in a very fear-based environment, amongst other things. And that's not even pointing 100% on at anyone at this point. We can, I think that bringing it back to a human level, like, look, if we have real quick, we had in Philadelphia, it was a waste facility or something like that, plant that dumped into the Delaware. and everybody freaked out. You know, I already had some supplies here. You always wish you'd have more, and luckily it wasn't a big deal. But it was going to fuck up the drinking water, and you weren't going to be able to drink it. And luckily, they kind of, the way that the water was moving, it kind of missed a lot of our inlets or something like that, you know, tech talk stuff. But we didn't have that, what is it called? So when stuff gets poisoned, it's a contamination. Jesus Christ. Thank you. I only have 2 degrees and you would never know it. We didn't have the degree of contamination, but point of the story, I went out, and this is 4 hours after we got the news that this was going to be a thing or potentially. And I wanted to just buy more stuff. And the shopping center, every place that had food and water, etc., they had so many people coming in. They took like 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper, taped them to each of the sliding door things that open, and said, no water. 4 hours. So that's kind of between us. I don't like to, again, harp on that shit necessarily because, you know, you could I'm overwhelmed. You know, we just manage better because we kind of have you know, we look at a wider, through a wider lens, you know, maybe. But yeah, I love bringing up the FEMA, the 2 weeks. And then it's actually a great segue into personal preparedness via having some sort of means of protecting yourself in that mindset shift. So I got a little strategy tactic things I do. But anyway.
But Jeff, I got a good example of that with the recent hurricanes. And I don't know how, you know, if you guys got affected much, Brian, or not, but one of our students, his father and mother-in-law live in Western North Carolina and around the Asheville area. I think it is, don't quote me exactly, but it really affected them. And he had been harping on them for a long time as far as, hey, you need to be prepared for natural disaster, or just, you know, have a little bit stored if something happens. And so the hurricane came through. They were down to, they had 2 gallons of water total between the two of them. They had no food in the house. And the closest place that they could go to get any supplies was 80 miles. But they were fearful of leaving their home because they thought it would be looted if they left. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, that kind of hits all those different aspects about being prepared, but then also with the, you know, being able to protect yourself and protect the things that you have. And I think a lot of times it takes a critical incident to affect somebody to maybe drive that decision, or maybe somebody that's close to them that helps drive that decision. So I don't really have an answer to, you know, as we broach this subject with somebody, how we change their mind that's not into it without something like that happening. Yeah.
And one thing that it's actually, the older I get, and and I say very gradually more mature, it starts to really burn my ass mainly, I think, probably, forget the maturity part because it's waxes and wanes, you know, depending on the audience, but is just like with how much shit is going on and how many natural disasters, and this is, and, you know, the, violence in the country, etc. Is like when people say this, oh, well, if shit goes down, I'm just going to go to your house. I get fucking mad now at that because we're talking about the same people that, you know, they have like 6 of those 12-ounce Nestle water bottle things, and they're in the fridge, and I'm just like, motherfucker, no, you're not coming. I mean, you can show up, but like, you can't come in. It's like, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. It's kind of shit. I'm like, my God, people. So I kind of, you know, and my demographic up here is probably quite a bit different than where you guys are, you know. And it's finding, like, because honestly, like, I want to be delicate about it because I want them to actually change. There's a difference, a fucking big difference between speaking with people and speaking at people, you know. You do the math and you wind up being like, wow, when I spoke at that person, they told me that I was a dickhead and walked away. When I spoke with them, we actually had a nice conversation. So One other thing I want to quickly point out was mentioning the SAS guy that stormed the Nairobi hotel and killed all those bad guys. I want to also point out, and this goes maybe into your class with the Regular Warfare Singleton Operator class you guys are going to be doing jointly, which is seemingly, from what you're telling me, like knowing your capabilities and limitations. Like this dude, I mean, first of all, fucking rock action star, rock hero, rock star. Thank you. Got there eventually. But he had the ability. Now he had balls bigger than Texas, but he at least went in, kind of knowing what he's getting involved in, and had the wherewithal and the presence of mind to be like, I'm going to do something. And like, that's one of the baddest things I've ever heard, like the most badass. But I want people to also visit, if you're not familiar with that story, what's the guy's name? One more time.
Christian Craighead. I'm sorry.
Christian
Craighead. Yep.
Christian Craighead.
Yep.
There's another a video you can rent, a documentary. It's called Terror at the Mall. And it's about, I think it was in Kenya. It was a mall in Kenya where they, and if I got that wrong, forgive me, but I believe it was in Kenya, and it was stormed by terrorists, and a lot of people were killed. And talk about terror at the mall. It's fucking terrifying. Like, they have all the camera footage from inside about as these dudes walk through with AK-47s and grenades and stuff and just just kill people. And looking at that, there was one story I will never ever forget. First of all, I'll talk about, like, don't make plans for after watching that, with your friends going out that night, because you're just going to be like quiet and sad, But there's one example that I never forgotten. It was this guy, and I think he was like an off-duty cop or something, but he was lawfully carrying, so he had a pistol. Let's say pistol tops 2 extra mags, and rather than going and confronting these terrorists, multiple terrorists with automatic weapons, his role was he held open an exit so that people could get away and out safely. And he saved, it was like 70 or 100 people, and it's like, that's the kind of stuff that I guess you guys are kind of talking about like, do I have a disproportionate armament from this? Can I, is the better thing for me to kind of go around the lake where these people are? Or, but that was a really significant, I don't know. That was a mental timestamp for me about, how one can actually like best serve themselves and the people around them. But I'll turn it back over to you guys. That was long-winded.
Something we have to think about in crisis management too is somebody who takes the first action usually dictates the outcome of everything. To get somebody to do something, whether it's holding a door. I know a story that's just, I don't remember how many rounds, but I think the officer was shot 16 times in an active shooter situation. And he felt pretty bad about himself, and he was pretty low about it. And a lady came to him and said, hey, I want you to know you saved all our lives. And he goes, all I did was get shot. And she goes, no, there were 16 of us in the next closet waiting for the gunman. You don't know what outcome you will have, but you have to get started, and you have to know what you're capable of. And if it's the simplest thing in the world is calling for help or rendering aid or holding a door, or you're well enough trained that you could take some action on this. It's interesting to watch people expand their idea of not only what they think they can do, but what they know they can't do. That's what we're trying to get everybody to it. So you get a real good feeling of stretch. I see it in class all the time. I'll talk about a shooting incident, and the tactical community is super judgmental about what their capabilities are because they shoot a little bit of paper and they feel pretty good about it compared to maybe law enforcement or whatever. But oftentimes you listen to the experts and they say, well, I can't opine on that because I don't have enough information. I didn't know what the situation was. I don't know what happened in that moment. And people often say, oh, I could do better. But what we're trying to do is give them the feeling of that stretch. What does the stretch feel like? How much does it diminish you? How hard is it to cycle from a rifle to a pistol and back to a pistol? And one of the funniest things from this class is the fatigue. They're tired from carrying gear. And so that begs the great, and I'm never seeking great answers. I'm always seeking the great questions is, how can we help people be more comfortable in the world? how can they meet these situations, because we just don't know what's coming next. Historically, psychically, there's really no big differences. What we keep seeing every 20 or 30 years, it just comes in a different presentation, but we have more people congregated together. And interestingly enough, it creates a lot more information and everybody gets to hear about this a lot more. So the question is, can't we all be better prepared to step forward in our own particular role? Be able to handle what we can, and I think it's cool when you meet a badass like Shane, and you're a good man, and you do
Own
good
it.
work.
Own
Own
it.
it. That's right.
Damn it.
Thank you,
Don't-
gentlemen.
Don't make me give the false humility speech. But he's very calm, very laid back about it, very present all the time. And we see this continuing thing of, it's not bravado, it's just knowing who you are.
Mm.
Well, and I think, like you said, Brian, there's a big difference between, having an inflated ego of yourself and what you think you can do, and having the confidence to be able to get up and do it, or be able to perform on demand. And one of the things that Brian does, which I think is awesome in his classes, even separate from this one, is, okay, who wants to go first? Always be ready, be prepared, and be ready to perform. Be confident in your abilities. And with that also, pushes people outside of their comfort zone, and it can help also show their limitations of where they're at. And if we don't push people outside of their comfort zone and get them fatigued, they're never really going to grow, because, people get stuck in their little comfort zone bubble and never want to expand out of that. And the way to expand out of that is through failure. And, if we can help push that and expand people's comfort zone and give them that confidence and the ability to know, yes, I can do this, or this is beyond my capabilities or my capacity right now, so maybe I need to go about this a little bit different way. And I think that's kind of the neat thing about the class, is that, yes, we're teaching, rifle and pistol, and we're going over equipment, but I think there's a lot more mental game to it than anything.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I have found that, as we're starting our journey of becoming a practitioner, and we'll say specifically with combatives and firearms, like physical violence, or more like anti-violence. Did I just coin something? Whatever. I did it and it's mine. Now I don't remember what the fuck I was gonna say. That we all kind of start. I mean, I'll take myself for example. I started with the rah tactical training community stuff, where it was just fucking go, man, and just shoot, and no shot accountability. Jesus Christ, if I saw a target, I'd be like, I don't know who the fuck's hitting what. You're shooting on the move. There's no shot accountability, etc. And then you slowly kind of make your way through this, and you may stay in that camp, which is fine. You're choosing that this is how you spend your time. I don't care. Just try not to legislate with it. You know what I mean? But that's separate. But I found that the people, and I honestly, and I've started using this word more recently, probably in the last years. I feel so blessed and privileged and lucky, kind of a little bit, to have found my way into what you guys are talking about, and the people that we want to surround ourselves with, in my opinion, also to get the best results, whether it's accuracy, or whether it's your mindset, or your abilities, capabilities, limitations, or hey, I need to get into shape, I got flattened out in that Evo, or I don't know a goddamn thing about medical. But I think that the best results and the biggest gains and the most competent and capable people that we can make are through letting people understand what their abilities and limitations are, and then getting them on okay, honey, by honey I could be dude or chick. I'm not saying a chick. Chicks always outshoot the fucking dudes, though, and I can tell you from Shane's rifle class that the one chick outshot us by a fucking mile. But I'm not salty at all about that. Not even a little fucking bit.
Hey,
and
that's okay. Brian knows Heather also.
I mean, just come on. It's just go home, Heather. It's you're making us all look bad. But the people that we wind up running with, you just get better results when you say, hey, look, do the best that you can. you know. And some people hate that phrase, but it's like, do the best that you can with what you have. And essentially what we're getting into is a culture that is nurturing as opposed to like mind fuckery. And we all know there's a difference between getting someone on a line going, oh man, all right, I gotta do pep, 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 pep. And the person going, you lost them, man. You're done. They're done. You fucked them. And it's not, oh, they're not taking the lesson. It's you're approaching the lesson plan wrong with that individual. And that, like, I've gotten to the point now where that shit just bothers me because I think it's unnecessary and counterproductive. But that's all I have to say about that.
Well, I think, and Brian's talking about being present, and, part of it, in a critical incident or during, some sort of altercation or natural disaster, whatever, it's real easy for people to let the chaos envelope them, where they kind of shut down. And like you were just saying, Jeff. And so, getting people uncomfortable, but also getting them present and learning, hey, shoot your own game or whatever verbiage that you want to use, be present. Don't worry about everybody else. I refer to it as getting in your combat bubble. It could be a flow state or what have you. So then you have the ability to solve those problems. And because things are going to go wrong. And no matter how much you practice, especially in a controlled environment, how great you think you are, problems aside from the initial problem that you're trying to deal with are going to arise, and you can't let them overtake you. You have to be able to work through that particular problem so you can get back to the major problem that you're trying to solve. And the only way that we can do that is being present in the moment and critically thinking so you can solve whatever problems arise. And, Brian does a great job of it in all of his classes. And when someone starts to have that disparaging type of talk or mindset, he helps them turn that into a positive thing really quick. And I think both of us have really tried to do that in the class together, but then also separately in our other classes, because the power of having that positivity is huge, and it can lead to good outcomes. But if we go in the reverse role, it can lead to catastrophic bad outcomes.
Yeah. Real quick, and then I want to get your thoughts on that, Brian. What I like with regards to what you just said, Shane, is one of the ways the verbiage that I use to try to pull people out of them going like this. And it's different if they're doing it while they're shooting. Well, they're looking over the top of the sights, and that's why they're not hitting where they want to hit. And they already that bullet already left the barrel. You can't take it back. This shot is the most important shot, kind of thing, right? But when people start fucking themselves up, or feeling really hard on themselves, down on themselves, which God knows I've been there, is just saying, look, what you're experiencing is not unique to you. Like, this is something that we see. This is a frequent theme. So let's address this. And I have found, for whatever reason, that's my individual goal that I can give people, because it makes them think that they're not the first person to do this. And for whatever reason, I don't know. That's like what I have found is the kind of weird, again, for me, like this weird magical panacea to get them back present again. So I tell them, look, this is not unique to you. Okay, let's just talk. Let's just build back our grip or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Thoughts on that, Brian? All that. There's a lot in there.
So, yeah. Two things. We have to recognize the struggle is important. We have created a culture, especially with children, where we say you're gifted. And by the time they're in 8th or 9th grade, that gifted child can no longer proceed at the same level. But they no longer have the tools to actually move forward either. And what they tend to do in that moment is start lying. The teacher didn't do a good job. I don't understand the task. And we found, and neuroscience has really put a good block on it, is the part of the brain that struggles grows under struggle. So one of the funniest things in the world is Shane goes rucking. He got out of the Army, but the Army didn't get out of him, right? But it's the struggle his brain requires. So with the shooters, we're always trying to frame the struggle. But the real problem is we have a negative bias by nature. It was incredibly useful for survival. If you thought there was a bear there, it was probably better than going and looking. But that negativity damages our self-image, and then it becomes the confirmation bias. So I suck. And I confirm it over and over, and it becomes very hard to break. And that damages the self-image. When the self-image is damaged, the reason people choke is one of two reasons, and it's usually in unison, is not enough self-awareness and too much self-control. They know they can't do something, but they're not aware of what they're capable of. So choking comes from not having a good balance between those two problems. And we have to reward the struggle. We have to refrain it. We have to think about building the self-image, because we're not going to be present for their fight. We would love to be there. I'm sure if they could call us and we could teleport, it would be great. But they're going to be on their own. And it may be something simple like it was with me. It was COVID. It wasn't a martial arts match. How do I stay in the struggle? How do I reward myself? Shane knows about the eternal now, as you do for martial arts. I can do one more rep. I can last one more second. I can continue. And the problem for modern people is the struggle is too small right now. You could live the rest of your life. You could have all the food you want. You could be entertained, but you're still not content. And I can't offer you happiness, because as a human being, you don't want it. You need the highs, you need the lows. But the contentment comes from a job well done in facing this struggle. And whatever that would be, if it's something small like shooting or martial arts, it's a self-mastery course. So like accuracy mode, it's a form of perfection. It means it'll never happen. You're procrastinating to shoot the perfect round. So what I tell people is good enough. What is good enough? Speed mode can't be managed by slowing down. Jeff, you think very fast, right? You always have. And the worst thing anybody can say to you is, hey, slow down, take your time, because you got a flow going. So we tell people is see enough. And then when it's performance mode time and you have to, it's just do enough. What are you capable of? Reward the struggle, understand how much awareness you need to have of it, and how much your self-control needs to modulate back and forth. And that allows people to grow to their highest level.
And I want to give Shane an opportunity to maybe touch on one of the things that he maybe his magic phrase or anything or something like that. But so Brian, that is something that you say to, for example, to people like me, but that's see enough.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So like I know you've drawn the gun so quickly. You fired a shot without seeing. We all have, and somebody will say, slow down and get your hits. Incredibly damaging phrase, because people that love to go fast, that are geared towards speed, the object of slowing them down still doesn't change the decisional properties. If you're a bad driver fast, you're a bad driver slow. Nothing's really changed. So
or live in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
My
go
bad.
signal for you is this: did I see enough to do the task? For the accuracy first person, think about it as tension. It's a good way to do this is before the accuracy first shooter goes, they have no tension, and the tension is developed during the moment of the shot where they move the gun. For the speed first shooter, the tension's developed before they go and released during pressing the trigger, so it becomes task oriented. So one group needs to know what the go signal is clearly. That's accuracy first, just enough information. But for the time signature in the speed group, they need to see the sights on the target enough to shoot it relative to the context. And that's what gives them a control over their speed. I had one lady in class last week, and man, she came out of the holster the first time. I was like, holy moly, are you fast? I mean, she was just fast. And she goes, I know everybody keeps telling me to slow down. I was like, I don't want you to slow down. I said, in fact, I want you to speed up. I don't want you to speed up your vision. I want you to settle your eyes. I want you to quiet them out. I want you to open into space. And I said, I want you to wait until the second you see the sights enter the target. When they enter the target, you can press the trigger. And it just changed the outcome of it, because we're recognizing the real struggle, which is she thinks and moves fast. I married a ginger. She's fast as hell. Everything's always speed with her, and you can't slow her down, but you can orient her to the task by getting good information, where I tend to be more placid in the Zen master. I can be indecisive sometimes, so it's more important for me to just go. That's good enough. I've got enough information. It's a real psychological problem of time versus information that we were talking about before.
I have a much longer way of saying that, which is I usually say, take the time that you need to make the shot that you need to make. But see enough, I really like that. I still like mine, but I really like that even more, because that allows interpretation for the individual, perhaps. Yeah. Like you can give them a little, like what you just said to me. Let's pretend this isn't a class and I was the shooter. That sounds fucked up. I was the student shooting. You got to be careful these days. But you're coaching me, and you said I want you to see enough. That dialogue could take place, which is probably a lot more meaningful, albeit a little longer to be had. But no, that's pretty cool, man. That's cool. I dig that.
It's
cool.
Based off the psychological principle of the rule of three, which means we need 3 points of information to proceed forward, but we can only hold 3 in context. So the difference between a black belt in jiu-jitsu and a brown belt and a purple belt is simply this: the black belt can hold 3 options. You go to pass my guard, I'm looking for the Kimura setup, or set the triangle off the arm bar. I have a whole series of the sweeps coming into it. Whatever it is, I'm holding 3 possibilities. The brown belt, not so much, maybe only 2. And the purple belt, maybe they don't have a guard game. They've just started. They've always been a top player. So they're really working on seeing that elbow flare out. The idea is that we can only handle 3 things at once. Often our teaching, we complicate it by making it 5 or 7 or 9 things, which is a checklist to do before. But during it, the real problem is this: we take 3 million bits of information in through our senses per second, but we only have 150 bits of consciousness. So we're trying to shove 3 million bits into a water bottle. And as a teacher, all we can do is orient the mind to just enough. I know you've experienced this in jiu-jitsu. We use the breath to focus and get people to close their eyes so that they use a resource they're not used to. And then they can feel the other person moving. They make that connection to it. And that's feel enough. And it's really important to jiu-jitsu to trust it. It's important to shooting too. Speed first shooters tend to be kinesthetically aware. Accuracy first shooters tend to be visually aware.
The eyes closed flow roll is something that I do. When I was teaching fundamentals, I did with all of my students, and they got it. I consider that no bullshit accelerated learning stuff, because when we eliminate the visual sense, the other senses are heightened, and the physical kinesthetic or the tactile sense is just and how many times I got I never really felt like my weight before like that, because I'd open it up to discussion afterwards. Brief discussion, but you'd get, again, consistent themes, where their hips were, anyway. So yeah, absolutely. That's cool. Shane, thoughts on some of that stuff?
Well, I was just going to say, you just this morning again, when I talked to you on the phone, I was coming from a private session with a guy who we've trained. I don't know, this is our 6th or 7th year for him to go out on his yearly elk hunt. And so he is traditionally been an accuracy guy, shooting off of the bench, takes a lot of time to do everything. Everything has to be perfect. And so every year as we've been working, there's been a new theme. And just like you said, Brian, it's like picking 3 things and working on them. 2 seasons ago, it was calling the shot, because he just could not call the shot. He actually finally admitted to me that, during that season as we were training, that he goes, I can tell you everything up until it's time to shoot, and then I just go blank. And I was like, okay, this is, what we need to work on. So for this year, and he gets ready to leave next Wednesday, he was starting to get back into accuracy mode. And we've established this year of kind of a performance mode for him, of where he works good and when he needs to be in his conscious mind. And then when it comes time to shoot, let his subconscious take over, because he knows what to do. He's an extremely good shooter. He's a good hunter. But he was kind of falling back out of performance mode and into accuracy mode. And I use that same verbiage today with him. And last week when I was with him, is I was like, if you get in a situation where you're in a compressed time frame, I said, you have to realize that are the crosshairs in the vital? It's good enough, and break that shot. And, again, for him, all these things are, huge steps for him, because it's just a completely different training methodology for him. But it's has been greatly beneficial to him. So yeah, I think verbiage is important. Like, Brian was saying, understand, how we process information. What the mind does with things is important. And that's one thing, going back to the class that I think we both hit, whether it's with the rifle or pistol, is understanding reaction times, visual processing speeds, mental processing speeds, and what we need to, where are our limitations with that? How can we make them better? How can we also get the student to understand that, hey, you're only going to get so far with certain things because you're born with it, but you got to work within those parameters.
And let's go back a little bit to the class. So you started to say a little bit about pistol and rifle. So if you have a general round count and how many days it is, can you give us more info about the specifics of the class?
Sure. Usually it's kind of open as far as round count, but we specify for everybody to bring 400 or 500 rounds of each so they can shoot a lot. But the real interesting part is going back and forth constantly from rifle to pistol. We split it into half-day sessions, but we both do a little bit of both, and we let them shoot. One of the great hits for my block of instruction was I did a tape drill where they watch the recoil relative to the rifle and then a recoil relative to the pistol. And in all good teaching, there's four things that have to happen. One is a clear goal, and you can only pursue one at a time. Then it's get them to be present, which means what do you see, what do you feel, what do you hear? And then it is the immediate feedback loop. As Shane was talking about the hunter, the immediate feedback loop has to be filled better in shooting. And one of the problems we've really struggled with in shooting is, unlike doing jujitsu or boxing or Muay Thai, the targets don't fight back in the same way. We often say that jujitsu gets a better result in the long run as long as it's well organized because we get to do it over and over. But the real thing is we get to see the pattern, and you get to survive it mostly the pattern over and over again, and you get to do it again. Whereas most people never really see the pattern of their shooting. They don't see the difference of the pattern between a rifle and a pistol, which is significantly different. The rifle barely moves, the pistol moves a lot, but the rifle feels very impressive and the pistol feels like a pop gun. And it's a very weird change for the brain to go from one to the other. Then the draw stroke and the up position is very different. The sling management's very different. So we're creating real complex and novelty of going from one to the other, and not just saying that we go to the pistol when the rifle's failed, that the pistol's an important part of what you do, and maybe the only thing you have at that moment, or maybe you're working towards your rifle, or maybe you have a rifle and it's not suitable, or you have a pistol and it's not suitable because he takes them out to, what do we get, to 300 yards or 200 yards with him?
Yep, couple
Yeah,
hundred.
yeah. So they're getting this real stretch and feeling of how they both work, where they're really sufficient to, how weird it is to go from one to the other. And what really matters to the shooter is, am I making a good decision? Am I paying attention? Do I have a clear goal of how I'm going to implement this? And then the final thing in teaching is challenge skill ratio. So they have to be challenged appropriately, which means large majority of the world is not a risk taker because we need them. People like us need them to hold our beer because
Yes.
we're going to go do silly shit. That's how we work. So 1 out of every 5 is a risk taker. If you're very prone to risk taking, you're likely to disassociate during training. It means you're not present and you're very dangerous. I know as a sergeant, Shane has looked for the 1,000-yard stare and simply gave them a task that's meaningful to get them back in place. And the other side of that in the training class is somebody who's over challenged tends to stretch and then they snap and they're not present anymore. So the idea was using these two ideas back and forth of training and how it works, and positional shooting and shooting from different ranges allows that brain to feel that real stretch in the class. It's not so much a tactics class at heart. It's more of a decisional class of, here's your tools, here's your cognitive skill stack. Can you cycle from one to the next? Are you able to make good decisions? Can you take a variance in your information? A lot of people are so committed to their tools that they feel anything that's different, it drives them nuts, or they can't pay attention because they're creating novelty complex constantly. They're switching guns or switching schools or switching teachers. And what we're really trying to get them to do this is have a clear goal, be present, get your feedback loop, and then be challenged just enough to make your skills grow.
Shane, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say, and
Yeah.
I think, we scale up and scale down during the class.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of meets everybody's, it makes it challenging for everybody. And everybody, as they go through, has those different challenge points. So, everybody gets a lot when we do the back to one drill. And it's just awesome because there's, so many rounds in it, but they also get fatigued during it. And they're working under a cognitive load, plus, applying the fundamentals and working through with the rifles. And that puts a stress load on just about everybody in the class, but it's at different points within that drill. But then as we go through and bounce back and forth and go to other drills, there's certain areas where people are going to be really challenged because it's outside of their comfort zone. And then certain areas where they're going to be sufficiently challenged, but it's not going to be super challenging. But, finding that balance for everybody and being able to scale up and scale down so everybody feels those stressor points, I think really helps enhance what people get out of it. And, just like Brian said, it's not really a tactics course per se. It's more a decision-making, and learning how to solve problems.
And I think that's one of the measures that brings someone from a really good instructor to a great instructor is being able to, and dare I say it's almost kind of rare to find in the shooting type classes because, there's this whole thing of like, you can only move as fast as your, slowest turning wheel. And that is true to some extent. I mean, but I have a way of dealing with that, but the making everyone feel challenged, is one of the marks of a great instructor for me, because if you're doing, let's say, drawing from the holster and one into the one into the two or whatever, and it's just over and over, and there's a whole lot of attention focus. Even if like the instructor walks down and says, okay, I want you to make 2 in the 1, 2 in the 2, or 1 in the 1, 1 in the 2, 1 in the 1, and really focus on eyes, muzzle, and then you have them do it a little faster. And that only takes a little bit of time, but it takes a trained, I love doing that with the ED thing and a hard trained eye and an attention to detail as an instructor, and also having the tools to keep people challenged. Like that's where I wish to be, and I think it's a process for everyone getting there. But I think it's important. I think it's really, in fact, one last thought about that, where I really started really seeing that was when I stopped doing group classes years ago, which I'm now going to be doing. Now I started doing actually with a shotgun class in Connecticut, which was awesome. I'm probably doing a pistol rifle class coming up in maybe November 30th, not on the calendar yet or anything, but I really found the psychology, because a one-on-one class, or excuse me, a one-on-one session is the polar opposite as far as like logistically speaking and all that with a group class. The group class energy is intoxicating. The intoxication factor with the one-on-one is like getting those wins because you're seeing that with the individual, but also being able to become so intimate with their psychology. And that is like fascinating. But being able to, and given it's way easier with a one-on-one, I mean, you'd have to be a really shitty instructor if you couldn't like gauge them and get them kind of a little bit outside their comfort zone, but still feeling good, ending on a win, all that stuff is, you start to see like, wow, okay, so this level of input gets them a little bit further. And then now, as a result of doing that for years, when I did that shotgun class, I felt pretty good. Not awesome, because I would never allow myself to feel awesome, because why would you ever go, wake up and go to bed feeling fucking good? Blame my father. Whoa, Jeff. Okay, we'd like to wrap up. I'm kidding. My dad was fucking awesome. But then being able to give quick things to people, and fuck it, I'll tell people, like, because a lot of people have never heard this, shoot a little quicker. And then see what they do. It may take 3 or 4 reps until you see what they're, okay. And you go back and you say, dude, okay, just, and it's that, but that's where I think that teaching is part science, and part like fucking magic. I mean, I know that Brian would probably tell me some very deep Zen level guru things about and helping me define what the magic is. To me right now, it's just magic. But I shouldn't say that on my show. Thoughts, gentlemen?
Well, we're keeping it an instructor magic. It's staying at that.
Fucking dude, it was magic, man. He just came over. I could suddenly shoot. So,
It's something that martial arts does well, though, is they have to teach a lot of different people at one time in different groups, and they recognize patterns sooner. Uh, we're still second, third generation firearms instructors, and thank God they laid the pathway, but it's like first generation karate. I was in karate system, and Trias was one of the first instructors, and they laid a good groundwork, but it wasn't a business, never meant to be a business. It's very difficult to make it a business. And then by the third generation, you can completely screw it up or you can revamp it. And what we're kind of seeing now is that we're getting a performance methodology of how can we get people to perform well. And it's not just the task that makes the demand. You're a tactical guy, you're a competitive guy. None of that really matters. If you look at Shannon's eyes background, it's really the same thing. He had to teach uneducated people how to do something really well. That's what SF is supposed to do. I have to do the same thing. How can we get a result really quick? Pattern recognition, because you're going to see the same thing over and over. But people often get confused with the beginner's mind is that, I'm always a beginner. That's not true. You go out of beginnerhood after your first shot. And I'll give you, for instance, if you've ever taught anybody how's their very first shot, it's perfect. And what happens after that?
Right through that bullseye.
That's right.
Oh my God, I hit it through the bullseye. That's the bullseye, right?
Yeah, that's perfect, right? That's a really good shot.
We can stop the lesson right now.
Yeah.
We're good, right?
Thank you. You
might want
dismissed.
But then what happens next is it's not perfect because now they have a series of associations and expectations. They're ready for the outcome now, and they're no longer in the task, so they don't know how to do it better. And the beginner's mind says, I've never done this shot as I am now in this moment. It doesn't say I'm a beginner for life. And then we take 4 contexts of this. How do I handle the firearm? How do I hit the target? How do I do it with speed and efficiency? And how do I do it with context? And that happens pretty quickly for people. So we have a beginner and intermediate advanced level for a reason, and we can do it as instructors. Oh, look at that. That is a fluffy cat. Look
Sorry,
at that.
he walked by and I was like, "Oh, do you mind being?" This is Ajax. He's a Siberian forest cat. Look at how big his paws are. He's like, "Okay,
Jesus.
look at how fucking big."
He looks like the most bored house tiger ever.
Yeah, he's
Whatever.
hysterical. He takes himself so seriously, and it's. Shane has met and spent time with Ajax.
Yep. He's a home wrecker.
He's a home wrecker. He has his first. Sorry, we totally went off the line of this. But he is obsessed with Shane's wife, Callie. It's like his first crush. And I've never seen him. I swear to God, I've never seen him like this. He was just like, oh my, pawing. She would have like a dangly thing, and he'd be like, oh. Swooning. I'm like, dude, have some fucking self-respect. What's wrong with you, man? Come on, you're trying too hard. Oh, poor guy. He walks away. So
magic. That's what I got to.
Magic. Yes.
Yep.
It's
all a magic trick.
Shane, were you gonna say something?
Magic.
I'm just gonna rename my training company Magic, or just kind of like put it on like with crayon over there.
Tactical Magic.
Magic. I'll tell you. I'm gonna sit on that one because we may have that idea may have some legs.
Teach anti-violence.
Anti-violence. Because using violence to end violence is kind of anti-violence, right?
Yes.
I don't know, man. I'm hoping that I fucking remember that. I'll say to my boyfriend, I'll say to Nick, like, hey, are you remember? They'd be like, someone's like, I really love this show. I'm like, what's the name of the show? Be, Monsters. It's the Lyle and Eric Menendez. Like, Nick, you got that? Now I can like kind of now pay attention or some. My brain just is like pinball, as you can tell. So that's awesome. So kind of to rehash, and then I'll give you guys we could talk about anything, and I want you guys to get the closing thoughts. Which I'm such an asshole. Like I always wind up speaking after you. Like I'd be like, okay, closing thoughts, and both people talk, and I'm like, yeah, I agree. It's like, no, dude. It's not a closing thought. Anyway,
hey, you said it's your show, Jeff. So
thank you, Shane. For God's sake,
it's refreshing. You're interested in your show too.
Well, yeah.
You got some energy for it. Thank God. Some people, I'm like, that's it. We're done.
Oh no, Well, here's the thing. I have a secret. We can put it with the magic, but But secrets are different. Secrets aren't fun. Secrets can hurt someone. But I'm telling everyone, so it can't hurt me. I make shows about stuff that I think would be interesting. And I make shows where I want to learn something from the other people. It's that simple, Yep. And how much have we, if, for example, not to give myself a pat on the back, but the show that I don't want to make, unless it's like somebody coming in from Beretta or HK or Glock, and we're like talking about this thing. I don't really want to come on and talk about everybody's guns. I don't really. That's not where the interesting shit is. The interesting shit is what Brian Hill is saying and Shane Kerwin is saying about the mindset and how do we cognitively load people? What do we tell our students? Like that's. I mean, I'm taking notes. I got fucking pages of notes. Look at that. With different colors. When's the last time you saw one of these pens, Brian?
Hey.
Heck yeah.
1980 called, and they cannot
they
have
sure
their
did.
pen back. No, not this one. Not this one.
Where did you find that?
Dude, I found it on Amazon.
Oh,
These
shit.
ones, though, are the real, like the Cuban, cigars of the pen. Well, this one is the fine tipped. They had to ship this shit from Japan. It was like $27 for 12 of them, but I was like, I just got to have it. So I did. But the medium bulb, the what is that? The 0.8 whatever millimeter. The medium is you can get them a lot easier, cheaper on Amazon. But yeah, man, let me tell you. Anyway, you got to keep it real.
Squirrel.
So that's a lot of awesome stuff. So and what I'm hearing is kind of some of the goals of this class are, it's such an first of all, it's such an interesting class model, and it is really fucking hard. I mean, and to our viewers, it's like, think about the last time that you were shooting rifle. It's like, oh, the 100-yard range is there. So we'll start with that, and then I'll go over and we'll shoot our revolvers or something, pistols, our DASA Berettas. And you're like, oh my God, this trigger's like, how many pounds is this, dude? I swear I shot this great last week. So I absolutely see what you're saying. And then you go back to the rifle and you're like borderline ND into the berm. You're like, Jesus, it just jumped out at me, man. I couldn't hold it back. So that's really cool. And then also giving them, and tell me if I'm not summarizing this correctly or improperly, giving them an understanding of which one of those weapons is most applicable for the given circumstance. And that's interesting. That's a very lacking thing now that I think about it, because you've got pistol classes, you've got rifle classes. Even when you've got a pistol rifle combo, like I think you said, Brian, it's usually a transition. Big gun goes down, and depending on proximity to threat, small one comes out, whatever you want to call them. That's really interesting. That's really cool. I just, what if we just wrapped it right there? Okay, well, so this is one of the, well, first of all, before I ask the next question, any other comments about kind of what we covered thus far, talked about?
Good.
Yep,
cool.
Good.
Word. By the way, you need to bring back this pen and people saying word.
4 for
you don't
sure.
have to. You don't have to. I'm just, don't, you got to say, you got to like ask someone something fucking ridiculous. Like, bro, you don't mind if I'm going to like drink heavily. Can I borrow that new fucking car you got? You don't have to let me know now. Just think about it. And they're just like, the fuck? Anyway. So this is a question that I will be throwing in, because you guys are the second interview that I've done for Arm Dynamics channel. And prior to getting Nick Hughes on that first one, 10 years was my last one before that. So that's why I'm really excited, because so much we've evolved, and I'm interested and fascinated again doing this. And anyway, so what are some of the takeaways that you guys have gotten through either your training as an individual or your life experiences? Like, what if you could give someone a takeaway or advice? Those are kind of two different things. We'll say a takeaway. What's your biggest takeaway, Shane, from your experience working with firearms? Training people with an SF. It could be kind of, what's the theme?
Well, I think it's, as far as it's multiple takeaways, but that if you were going to say as a takeaway, it's evolved as I've gone, and it's going to continue to evolve. But I think the biggest thing is now, and what I'm really trying to convey in classes is, and we've kind of alluded to it here, the shooting part isn't difficult. It's not difficult at all. And Brian said, with being a beginner, we can teach somebody the application of the fundamental of marksmanship, whichever system we're using, relatively quickly. Now, yes, it does take time to develop, and the road to mastery is long, but the shooting part, really, when it comes down to it, it's easy. It's all the critical thinking and problem solving that add the complexity into that. And so if we can get past the shooting and then work all the things that we've been talking about, over the last hour and 24, 25 minutes, and get them to understand that and in context and how to solve that problem, that's where I think, I'm trying to go with my training when I'm teaching people, and get them to just understand too that, hey, what to do. And again, going back to my example of the guy earlier today, the guy can flat out shoot, but he lacks confidence in himself. And that's the third thing that we really worked on this year. And I'm like, it's all the other things that, are throwing you off. I say, but you know how to shoot, you know how to apply the fundamentals of marksmanship. When you can just let go and do it, you flat out stack them in the same hole. And it doesn't really matter what position you're in. So the shooting part is easy. It's all the other stuff that you can't get bogged down on. You have to, prioritize and understand how to task stack and be able to solve those problems as they arrive to ultimately solve the main problem. And, as we add context into training and get people to understand, hey, yes, I know how to shoot. I know how to apply the fundamentals of marksmanship. That frees up my conscious mind to critically think and problem solve. And the shooting part is subconscious. Then I think we're helping them in leaps and bounds to go forward. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Brian?
I realized early in my career as an instructor that I was a post-traumatic growth instructor, that usually by the time they come to our class, the bad stuff's already happened. That's why they're in our class. They've lost their strength. They've lost their ability to walk the world. And I don't mean with a lack of fear, but in a fearless manner. So oftentimes as we're teaching, we're trying to help them gain their strength back. Healthy people don't tend to come to classes about shooting sometimes until the bad stuff happens to them. And I think that a lot of modern coaching methodology is exceptionally useful in this area, because as I ask people in my inner game of shooting, you understand grip, sights, trigger, you understand follow through. Why aren't you a better shooter? Because it comes down to time pressure. This is a very simple thing. As we talked about, guns don't care about gender. They don't care about your race. They don't care about anything. They're easy to shoot. They're tools, but we create a lot of problems, and it's a problem that you see replicated throughout that person's life. And this very narrow task can often help give them great strength. And I often I feel like I'm the Tony Robbins of shooting sometimes lately. But I see people get better in the moment and realize who they are. The other thing is burnout. People get burned out. Jeff, you've been burned out, obviously, a little bit with stuff. And the reason we don't understand how to overcome burnout is it's an acceptable part of training. The emotional uncertainty, the emotional ambivalence is part of what we do. But the intrinsic motivators of having a clear purpose. Why do we train? It's not just because we're worried about fighting now. We all have more than sufficient skill to handle a fight. So what is our true purpose in training? What is our passion? Why do we do this? What gets us up every day? What's going to keep us going? What's going to do it for us in a lifetime? Why do we do it? Is it our own idea? Is it autonomy? Are we trying to please somebody else? Or are we doing it to ourselves? This struggle, this contentment that we need. Are we seeking mastery? That's something sadly lacking in America. People are so worried about saying they're good at anything now. They're not good at anything anymore. They won't even say it. They're so humble about it. But I don't trust. I never trusted a fighter when he comes in and I look and I see cauliflower ear and a slightly crooked nose and fingers from the gi, and I'm like, hey, have you ever trained before? A little bit. I was like, so we start with a lie. We're all seeking mastery. We may never become masters, but that's why we're doing it. And then the final thing is curiosity. It's the only thing that makes life worth living. We've got to ask better questions. That's the only thing that matters as an instructors. And I seek out peers like Shane, like you, Jeff, to talk to so that I can keep myself enthusiastic, so I can ask good questions. I can listen to the things that you're presenting. And then I have a name for what you said earlier. I have kleptomnesia, which means I'm going to remember all your ideas as my own. I'll try to attribute you, but I forget every
You
time.
brute. It's another word we got to bring back, by the way.
Yeah.
That word's funny. You brute.
Brute.
No, I want to bring back skullduggery.
Yeah, you were saying that before.
Yeah.
And I like chicanery.
Yes.
Jesus. Maybe that's what I should call this. It'd probably get a lot of hits if it was like
It would.
skullduggery and chicanery. Be like, what the fuck? Oh, it's Shane and Brian. Well, why'd they call it that? I guess I'll watch.
Because we would pique curiosity.
That's right.
No doubt. No doubt.
Well, this is I got to tell you, like, man, I love doing these interviews again. I'm happy
Good.
that this it's just been so fun. It's just I've learned so much in just the 2 interviews that I can't wait to as the channel gets kicked back up and continues to grow and stuff, really putting out good information. And my mission, aside from the 2 things I said about doing them on things I'm interested in learning stuff, is I want to expose you guys. And this is where everyone goes, what the fuck? No, I want to expose good trainers. Because goddamn, I know so many people with just such an amazing product and they're just like interesting people who are thoughtful about what we're doing and never rest on laurels and are always seeking new knowledge. And it's like, you know what? Not only is that great for shooting, tactics, tactical training, the combatives, but that's just, if we could have that in life, I find that it's kind of similar to my late acting mentor, the great George DiCenzo, said that acting class was a microcosm of life. And I think it's the same thing with the training community. The people that are real, there isn't the ego driven thing. Now, sure, we want to do well, but like I say to everybody, I bring up Shane, sorry, earmuffs. I bring up Shane and I'm like, I bring up Shane and Gary. And I'm like, the baddest motherfuckers I know, you would never know it. Now, Brian, you may have difficulty. You probably got some cauliflower ears underneath those things, but still, like the generosity in spirit and the calmness when it counts and the nurturing of others, like those are life skills. It's and I feel I feel so privileged to be part of it, and paying forward, going back to kind of one of the original thoughts we tackled was, paying this forward. The people that have trained and mentored us, God grant me the serenity to continue putting that and paying it forward, but God, I love how these always wind up getting so deep. I blame you, Brian.
Always me.
You're like, I accept. I'll give you guys, as we're winding down, and again, the name of the class is Irregular Warfare, Singleton Operator. And again, I'm here with Shane Kerwin of Personal Survival Solutions and Brian Hill of thecompletecombatant.com. Guys, Shane, I'll give you last word, and then Brian, last word number 2, closing. You
Sure.
get it. I don't know what the fuck you call those things.
No, thanks for having us on, Jeff. Like I said, Brian and I have done this class, did it twice this year, looking to have it go in 2025. I know that Callie and Shelly are trying to pin down a date or dates for it. But I think it's something that's extremely unique, that I don't know of anybody else that's doing anything similar. They might be doing a rifle and pistol combination, but I don't think they're doing it the way that we have designed it and put it together. So it's a lot of fun. Every time I'm with Brian, I learn a lot from him and enjoy teaching with him. I think our personalities are very similar, but again, we have them very different backgrounds. And so it's always just a really good time talking to him. And the people that we've had come out and taken it so far have just been amazing, and we're starting to cross pollinate between our tribes, if you will. And it's just been something really, really cool to see. So I'm glad we got to come on and talk about it and hang out with you, man, and Ajax.
Dude. Fucking love that cat. He's hypoallergenic too. He's a Siberian forest cat, and he is smart. I trained him, Brian. I come, sit, lie down, stay. I put his food in front of him, say stay and sit, and then go to it. I don't want to say it out loud. Go to his LITTLE BED at night, because if I say it right now, he'll go, because he gets a little dried salmon treat. But I don't really like cats. They're kind of gay. I had to honestly, I'm so not the stereotypical gay dude that I had to, what the fuck can I do? Oh, get a cat. I'm allergic. I'll get a hypoallergenic cat. So I give myself, that's I got to have one fucking check on the list. So Brian, closing thoughts.
First and foremost, grateful to both of you. Shane, it's always a pleasure to talk with you and teach with you and grow a new idea. I think this class is taking on a life of its own, and I hope it'll continue to evolve as we work together. And then something for you, Jeff. You don't know this, but early in my career, I listened and watched you quite frequently. And this feels like a closing of a cycle. It's nice to finally meet you and talk to you. You had a big impact because you were always asking better questions than other people, and you were seeking more knowledge, and you were interested in everything except just how to shoot better. And you were an exceptionally good shooter. So you had a big impact on me early. And this is why these programs are important. The deep listeners, they don't ever comment. That's what I've learned. They get to work, and they go and work on the things that you're doing. And my hope is from this class and this talk that people will have something new to think about and something new to work about, and that they'll get after their work a little bit more. Life is fleeting, and it's all going to be gone so quickly. And the value of what we do is how much we pay attention to it. And that's how the brain gobbles up resources. So I'm grateful to both of you, grateful to this opportunity. It's nice to finally meet you. I looked forward to it for a long time. And when Shane said this, I was pretty excited to come on and talk with you.
Well, I think you've done what not many people have done, which is make me feel kind of speechless.
Perfect.
No, that hits me, man. And that's the kind of stuff that it does something, honestly, for my soul, and I know for the soul of the instructors that I look up to when somebody says something like that. So I'm fucking flattered beyond, I guess, something funny to say. Well, that's awesome. And just from this conversation, Brian, I'll talk to you a little offline about coming on and doing something about martial arts, the traditional martial arts, and how they influenced our lives. And Shane, I know you did get a black belt, correct, in
Taekwondo.
In Taekwondo.
And then dabbled in a bunch of other traditional martial arts, and then jiu-jitsu and that. I
mean, I'll put it out there right now. I'd love to do another episode and specifically about that because that's something that I've really, Nick Hughes kind of touched on it a little bit, but we had so much stuff to cover. Anyway, this has been absolutely amazing, and I am so grateful to you guys for coming on, and even more so, I'm grateful that you guys are in this, are helping people, and it's way beyond shooting classes and fighting classes and self-defense classes. These are like the things that I know that some of my biggest life growth as an individual and a man, as a human, has been through classes like you guys provide. So I'm indebted. I got to be truthful, because why would I lie on my show? Anyway, Jeff Blubin with Arm Dynamics, thank you for joining us again. This is Shane Kerwin of Personal Survivor Solutions and Brian Hill of The Complete Combatant. You can go onto their websites, and they've got all of the accoutrement, the Instagram and Facebook and all those great things. But support them and support their classes, and I'm sure they'd love to hear from you. And make sure you say that if you go to one of their classes through the show, make sure you say that. I'm sure that they'll put you on the end of the firing line and be harder on you. Now they're not going to say it. Damn it. All right. Thank you again. And we will see you in the next one. Let me see how. It's always a fucking. Bye, folks. Didn't I do it? What is? Oh. End recording. Oh, okay. End recording.